Hello and welcome to episode 9 of Gender Forking, a Life and Death podcast, aka Stephanie Meyer's gender swapped Twilight. But little did we know it is so much more than that. I'm Sam.
And I'm Lori. So today in Forks it is 52 degrees and there's a 60% chance of rain. So it's raining. Good day to be a vampire.
Good day to go to school and see your vampire girlfriend. It has just been a wild ride. We've actually finished reading Life and Death.
Maybe we should talk about how that came to be.
Yeah.
So I realized there were only 30, 50 pages of the book
Yeah,
left.
if that.
And so I was like, oh, that looks like, one episode. Let's read it out loud together. And I read it to Sam while she and I were driving on a day trip that was completely consumed by my thinking of Twilight.
We read this in the car together, and then we both just read it again, and we're actually going to do this the last two chapters, the last chapter and the epilogue. They're each going to have their own episode because there's just so much. As we left off with in the last episode, it left off with Beau probably being changed into a vampire, which is obviously the exact opposite of what happens in Twilight.
Right. So if you're familiar with Twilight, throw everything out the window because nothing matters.
From here on out, it's completely different. It's the same universe and there are some of the same people, but the plot is entirely different.
Major life and death spoilers.
Yes.
Coming up in this episode.
Yes. I'm surprised that I hadn't heard about this before.
Me too. I assume the internet would be like, what?
Yeah. Does no one, I think maybe it's with a Harry Potter and the Cursed Child thing, and no one accepts it as canon. Or maybe people just don't care. I mean, we've only been on the Tumblr scene for Twilight for a month as Twilight bloggers, but I mean, we've been in the fandom for much longer and haven't heard anything about this book that came out 3 years ago.
Right. I feel like people probably ingested it at the time and then maybe didn't process the trauma of reading. No, but they probably didn't. They probably made their shit posts, and it was probably really funny for a few weeks, and then everyone was like, anyway,
yeah, we got what we needed from that, which is just Edith and Bella crossovers. We're going to spend this episode of Gender Forking talking about chapter 24 of Life and Death, which is called Change. And boy is it change. Yeah, so I have a lot of thoughts about this. A lot of them are negative, actually. So, yeah.
Yep, I'm eating a muffin.
Okay.
First, let's address the first line of the chapter.
Yeah.
Which shook me to my core.
Well, read the line before.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right. On the page before, Edith is like, he deserves a choice. And then she's like, Beau, I won't make this decision for you. I won't take this away from you. And I'll understand, I promise, blah, blah, blah. Tell me what you want, Beau, anything. You, I spit through my teeth, just you. Whatever. And then the first line of chapter 24 is, I ended up changing my mind. And I was like, oh my god. Have I just spent a whole full 24 hours imagining that Beau was going to turn into a vampire and then just having him die?
Clickbait.
However, that is not the case. It was just clickbait.
So, Beau is becoming a vampire throughout this whole chapter, or most of the chapter. He is experiencing a lot of pain. He is screaming. He is burning because the venom burns. It's an extremely painful process, as he has been made aware. And we know that it'll last about 3 days. While he's being transformed into a vampire, he's being transported back to Forks with... we don't really know. He's not super aware of what's happening. We actually don't even know what happened to Joss.
I'm pretty sure that we're supposed to assume that, Beau was just so out of it at the end of that, whole experience that he completely missed what was going on in the background while Edith and Archie and Corinne were yo, what do we do? Yeah.
Presumably Eleanor and Jessamine and maybe Ernest, I don't know, were, killed Joss. because that's kind of what happens in Twilight, and we can assume that, but we don't get confirmation that Joss is dead until like at the end of this chapter, and they spend like the 3 days that Beau is in pain like telling him so many things about being a vampire, and they like don't even tell him about what happened to the person who was trying to kill him.
So imagine New Moon, Eclipse, and half of Breaking Dawn put into
30
pages. Not even.
That's the rest of this book.
The rest of this book is entirely just like it could have been developed into probably like the same length of series as Twilight was, but Stephanie Meyer instead decided to be very self-indulgent and just write about whatever she wanted to include for details for the next 30 pages, and it just comes off so rushed, and like
it's incredibly rushed. It feels like such a cop-out because we know that she probably just didn't want to write another book, but she definitely could have with all the information she was trying to stuff into the end of Life and Death.
And it's like, I'm not going to demand that of her because it's her life and she can write whatever she wants, but like if she really fell in love with these characters in the way that she said she did, and if she really enjoyed writing the end of this if she really enjoyed like writing the end of this, as she like seemed to be so like proud of herself at the end and the afterward, which is such a slap in the face. Like, why wouldn't you care enough to be like, oh, I could totally write like another book on this?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into the details and we'll try to stick to just talking about chapter 24, but we probably won't succeed. But the whole point of her writing this book was to do a quote-unquote gender swap and be like, well, it's not any different. And, like, it's the exact same story when I change the gender of the characters, and then she just changes the entire story.
She sure
but
does.
It would have been so much more interesting if all the information that they gave to Beau at the end of the story was, like, dispersed throughout the book.
Yeah. Because there's no reason why, like, in this section, the information that they're giving is kind of, like, it's information about the Volturi, it's information about werewolves, it's information about
the Cullens'
everyone's
history.
Backstories, and, like, there's really no reason why, if Stephanie knew that this was going to be it, that Jessamine couldn't have told Beau, like, her story a couple chapters earlier in the hotel when Beau asked, like...
Even if not the whole story, just, like, an inkling.
Just...
anything.
And because this isn't the whole story that we're given in this chunk.
Yeah, it's not. It's very, very brief.
But it's like...
It's implied that it's the same.
You could have done that earlier, and it wouldn't have felt so, like, okay, who's next?
Yeah.
Like...
It's very bizarre. This whole sequence is very bizarre.
We can go through in order.
We're gonna go... We should go through it. So...
First, before we even get there, something that I've observed in this whole, like, thing is that Edith is sitting with Beau, like, almost... like, pretty much the entire time they're going off the hunt. When Edith is talking to Beau, she seems the most like Edward that I have observed in the entire book.
Yeah.
And she is very torn up about changing Beau, feels horrible about it, and is, like, really tapping into that, like, Edward, like, self deprecation and, like, hatred.
We also get Edith and Archie discussing how Beau may not want to be a vegetarian and, like, live the Cullens lifestyle.
Yeah.
Which, like, obviously he'll want to, and he does.
It's like, have you met Beau?
Yeah. So they are discussing that, and they think that he's gonna be like vampire newborns are, which is, like, very much out of control and, like, bloodthirsty and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So Edith is just, like, beside herself.
Edith is just, like, I feel like she's being, like, kind of blinded by the trauma of what she just had to do.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't really... Okay. Kareen, most of the time, had been able to put at least a day or two of thought into the process of changing someone. Whereas, like, Edith, in this situation, was not prepared to do what she did.
It was completely sprung on her.
I'm sure that, like, not only is that physically difficult for her, but it's also very emotionally difficult because she wasn't prepared for the emotions of, like, having to make that call. And, like, she did let Beau make that call, but, like, she also had to make the call of, like, am I prepared to do this? Like, she knew that Archie would do it if she didn't, but I have an appreciation for that, and it kind of makes her self-deprecation and hatred a little more understandable than Edward's. Yeah. Because, like,
Edward's self-deprecation is not... It doesn't feel as much like his grieving for Bella's human life. It feels more like grieving for his own human life. Yeah. In this section, we just get an obscene amount of information about all the stuff that Bella learns throughout the rest of the saga and the Twilight saga.
It's kind of like Vampire 101, but like the condensed summer course that
Yeah.
like you have to take because you failed it the first time.
And then a little bit different
yeah.
at Stephanie Meyer's own whim.
Right, yeah.
I think the most jarring thing about this was the Volturi stuff.
Absolutely.
So we know from earlier in the book when Beau first goes to the Cullens' house, he sees the portrait of Corrine with the Volturi. We don't know the Volturi at the time, but it's Marcus, and then it's Sulpicia, Athenadora, and Melee, and we're like, okay, we know that in Twilight, it's the other Volturi, it's Marcus and Aro and Caius, so that's different. And then Edith explains to Beau while he's like in pain, becoming a vampire, that it's this whole thing. We should just go through it.
Okay, so you're telling me that the characters, so yeah, it's worth noting now that the characters that are purposefully not swapped,
Yes,
and are given a coup,
yeah,
are these characters.
Yes.
It's the Volturi.
mm-hmm.
Like, honestly, Stephanie looked at this book and she, in her own words, said like these two characters specifically were really given the shaft, and they really had the hardest time of all. And it's the fucking Volturi is
Yeah.
who she landed on.
Marcus, maybe specifically.
Marcus?
I don't know.
Hello? Hello?
Marcus who wants to die.
Yeah, like, hello? Like, in what world do the Volturi have it harder than, like, let's make a list, Charlie?
Mm-hmm. Who definitely gets it worse. In this
Definitely
book.
gets it worse. Fucking
Literally
Bree
everyone.
Tanner.
Bree Tanner,
Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
No,
Just
Laurent, like...
Laurent. Even fucking Victoria.
Yeah, so this is Beau narrating, giving, like, a synopsis of the history of the Volturi that Edith is telling him. So basically what happened is there were 6 of the Volturi in charge, which is, like, Aro and Caius and Marcus, and then, like, their wives, I think, or basically some combination of that. Someone named Aro had murdered his sister, his best friend's wife. The best friend was Marcus. He was the man I'd seen standing with Corrine. Aro's own wife, Sulpicia, the one with all the masses of dark hair in the painting, had been the only witness. She turned him over to Marcus and their soldiers. There had been some question of what to do. Aro had a very powerful extra gift, like what Edith had, but more. Basically what they have is Melee has this power. She can take other vampires' gifts. So before they kill Aro, they take his gift and give it to Sulpicia, which is just, like, unnecessary because it doesn't serve any purpose in the story from here on out.
I guess it kind of, like, references the struggles where the Volturi are, in addition to being concerned with the survival and, like, protection of vampires, they're also elitists.
Yeah.
That are, like, very interested in developing higher powers.
Yeah, they're very
So
interested in collecting powers.
Maybe it's, like, a reference to that.
Yeah.
And reassuring the readers that, or just kind
Like,
of
they
like
still
pointing
have
out to
that
the readers
power.
that they still have that interest,
Yeah.
and that they still have, like, the need to collect supernatural powers
Mhm.
beyond, like, the typical vampire
Yeah.
experience.
They kill Caius. And then it says, Athenadora joined with Sulpicia and Marcus to lead their soldiers. They overthrew the vampires who terrorized Europe and then the ones who enslaved Egypt. Once they were in charge, they made regulations that would keep the vampire world hidden and safe. And then Edith is also explaining, like, the rules of being a vampire.
Yeah.
So, like, that's a huge difference that Stephanie Meyer has chosen to make.
As Stephanie says in the afterword,
Yeah.
that she thinks that this change, and Sulpicia being, like, ultimately the head honcho,
Mm-hmm.
she thinks that this change means that the Volturi will be more forgiving
Yeah.
and less, like, corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, that is something that is interesting to speculate about.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
The ramifications of that difference.
I mean, that's putting it all on, like, just the character differences between
Mhm.
Aro and Sulpicia.
Yeah.
And we don't really know
We
Sulpicia
don't
at
know
all,
her.
because
So it's not really...
we can't tell. And also, it's,
Yeah.
like, it's still the Volturi. Like, they still exist. They're still, like, the biggest power structure of the vampire world.
Mhm.
And they exist for arguably the same purpose. And, like, there's going to be a level of corruption there no matter
Yeah.
what, because it's systemically, like, that's what it is.
Yeah. It also begs the question, like, what other Volturi members are there? Like, Alec, Jane, like, are they still there?
Are they gender swapped?
Are they
Like,
gender
we don't
swapped?
know at all.
Like, we don't know that information. It could be that Sulpicia keeps it smaller. We're not aware.
Yeah. So that's bizarre, and we're not really
Choices.
sure why that's a part of the story.
Yeah. I think it's just there so that Stephanie can be like...
She just wanted to explore that.
I think she wanted to explore it, and I also think that if she didn't explore it, people would be like, what about the Volturi?
Yeah, it closes up the possibility of that, maybe, arguably. I would argue not, actually, but...
I think if what she wanted to do was make this so it couldn't have a sequel, she didn't do it.
Yeah, for more reasons than just that, actually. Yeah. But we also learn about the Denali's very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
We have some different names here. We have Kirill, K-I-R-I-L-H.
Sounds like a fish, like
it does.
krill.
Like krill, yeah. And then Elena. Those are the only two actual names that we get. And then, yeah.
But they're referred to as 3 Russian brothers and 2 Spanish vampires. And I just would like to say that 3 Russian brothers sounds like a craft brewery. And I will be exploring that venture. A vampire craft brewery out of Denali. Can you imagine? 3 Russian brothers. Like, what a great... Like, they're gonna make vampire beer.
It's just blood.
But it's just blood, but it's different. It's like
craft.
Fermented craft blood. Craft blood. But it's gonna change the diet of vampires across the world because it's gonna be vegetarian.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's gonna be animal blood.
Yeah, because they're vegetarians.
And it's gonna be a craft blood brewery.
Mm-hmm.
That's gonna be, like, sustainable, and, like, it's gonna just revolutionize the vampire experience.
Wow. Thanks, beer.
I am writing this. Oh, I've just been informed that that's the plot of True Blood.
I've never seen True Blood.
And I've never seen True Blood, so...
The plot of True Blood is that True Blood is a drink.
Uh-huh.
It's a blood substitute, and that's what allows vampires to go public.
Oh.
I can't believe that you invented True Blood.
I invented True Blood.
Literally had no idea. I had no idea.
Okay.
Wow. Okay, well,
my dreams are crushed. Yeah. But True Blood, but in the vampire, like in the Twilight universe. A crossover, if you will.
A crossover hit.
Oh, something insignificant that we learn, or we think it's insignificant, but it's one of the first things that Edith tells Beau, is that his blue eyes are gone.
Oh, he won't have blue eyes anymore.
About
she literally, like, stops.
She literally cries.
Yeah. And then we kind of get the information about how the Cullens live their lives. Beau says, I would be able to run faster than a race car and stronger than any living species on the planet. His greatest desire so far, apparently.
Oh. However, we also learn about werewolves immediately after the Denali's.
Yes, we get werewolves. We get werewolves, and we get the Cullens' backgrounds. So, it says, Corrine sat on the ground next to me and told me the most amazing story about Jules' family, that her great-grandmother had actually been a werewolf. All the things Jules had scoffed about.
Black.
A frame... a frame of black.
A framette.
A framette. All the things Jules had scoffed about were straight history.
Straight history.
Can you
the
believe?
Name of this podcast.
Yeah. Corrine told me she'd promised them she would never bite another human. It was part of the treaty between them. The treaty meant the Cullens could never go due west to the ocean. This is interesting. So, in this universe, only Corrine is bound to this treaty.
I double-checked this on the Twilight wiki, and in Twilight, it's canon that all vampires are held to that standard.
Yeah.
Like, all of the Cullens are held to that standard in the Twilight universe, but only
Which makes
Corrine.
sense.
Yeah.
But in this universe, apparently, it's only Corrine, which makes no sense.
Which makes absolutely no sense.
It makes no sense, and it's not explained at all.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then we get Jessamine's story. Jessamine was also involved with the army. Mm-hmm. And that's all we really get.
It's cryptic. It doesn't say during what time period.
Nope.
It doesn't say that
what, like,
if she's
a
Confederate.
soldier.
It doesn't
like...
say she's like a soldier. It just says she's involved with the war and the army and like carnage and
death. And then breaking free. And then finding Archie.
Which is the overall theme, but I think it's kind of irresponsible to like leave out.
Yeah, because we get the details of other people's stories.
Yeah, and it's just stupid because it's like, it gives you a lot more to work with Jessamine, who's like a very underdeveloped character at this point.
Yeah, extremely.
It gives you the fact that she was a Southerner, which is different gender-wise, of course. Well, everything is.
Yeah.
But it's different to be a Southern woman.
Yeah, which doesn't say Southern here either.
Yeah, and versus a Southern man, and like it like eliminates that nuance.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't get into the Confederacy issue that I wish it would.
We were very curious about Ernest's story, and we get it
Yes.
very briefly here. It says, Ernest told me about how his life had ended before he killed himself, about how his unstable, alcoholic wife and the daughter he'd loved more than his own soul. He told me about the night when his wife, in a drunken rampage, had jumped off a cliff with his little daughter in his arms, and how he hadn't been able to do anything else but follow after them. And then he found Kareen. And it's like, that's literally so different from Esme's story.
It's different because, as we've already explored, the age is different. It's
Age is
different because this daughter doesn't die of illness or whatever. She's murdered by Ernest's wife,
who's an alcoholic, which is different, which is very serious and also very different from an abusive husband.
Yeah.
And it's different from killing yourself to escape that despair versus, like, following your wife and child off of a cliff.
Yeah, and I don't even, like, of course Ernest would know, probably remember his intentions, but, like, I wouldn't even necessarily classify that as a suicide attempt if...
Yeah, it's very unclear.
If Ernest doesn't say, like, oh yeah, I was actually following them because I wanted to die, or, like, versus, like, that just being your gut reaction
to, like, chase after them. Yeah. It is described as how his life had ended before he'd killed himself, which, like, I mean...
Yeah. It's, like...
He didn't say that, though.
Yeah, I don't know.
We don't know the details of that moment.
It's also plausible that, like, Ernest's wife could have survived that.
Yeah, we don't know.
But and I don't think she did.
Yeah.
But I think that also makes it different because there's been this post going around Tumblr recently. Someone asked Panlight, which is a popular Twilight blog and one of our favorites, what the cover-up story for Esme was.
Yeah.
And it talks about how, like, Carlisle probably, like, fabricated some remains and said that she died, like, from an illness or something like that, in order to protect Esme from her husband coming after her.
Yeah.
Which I think is something that is different because, like, as Esme wakes up and is a vampire, she still is probably checking over her shoulder to make sure her abusive husband doesn't find her.
Yeah.
Because at this point they're the same age and they are, like, she's, like, not so different that she's not recognizable, and, like, she would probably end up accidentally killing him if he found her. And I think it's reasonable to say that he would probably go looking because he also is now missing a child and a wife. And the fact that Ernest's wife is presumably dead or, like, close to it when Ernest wakes up as a vampire is, like,
it's a different
very
reality.
Different. Yeah.
We get Eleanor's background, which is pretty much the same because it's probably the simplest backstory that we have. We don't get much for Emmett or Eleanor, just being attacked by a bear and then being saved by Royal. But then Eleanor also is the one who tells Beau that Victor got away.
Yeah. I did notice in Eleanor's story that Eleanor was like, I thought I went to hell and I probably deserved it.
Where?
In Eleanor's backstory.
In here?
Yeah. When Eleanor's like, when I woke up at first,
oh, justly, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I thought I was going, like, Eleanor thought during, like, the transformation that she was in hell.
Yeah, she
probably
she told
because
me
of the burning.
Yeah, it says she told me how she thought at first she'd been sent to hell, justly, she admitted, and then how she got into heaven after all. Yeah, maybe it could have been because of the burning.
Maybe, but it makes me wonder why she would say justly.
Yeah.
Like, why did Eleanor think that she deserved to go to hell? We don't really know much about Emmett or Eleanor's, like, previous human life, except for that they lived in the Appalachian Mountains, presumably, and I guess we're kind of outdoorsy if they encountered a bear.
Yeah.
If Eleanor is admitting still, like, justly that they feel like it would be just if they went to hell, like, they probably remember something about themselves that they don't,
which we don't
like,
even
we don't get
in Twilight.
Yeah, we don't know what that is.
Yeah, in the saga.
It's an interesting choice. It kind of, like, makes you think of Emmett or Eleanor as, like, a morally dubious human.
Yeah, and Royal also gives his story, which is very interesting, and, like, I'm a little bit surprised that Royal would tell his story to Beau, but
perhaps most different, I think, also.
Yes, this might be the most different. Let me read it out loud. He says, He told me about a life consumed with vanity, with material things, with ambition. He told me about the only daughter of a powerful man, exactly what kind of power this man wielded Royal hadn't entirely understood, and how Royal had planned to marry her and become heir to the dynasty, how the beautiful daughter pretended to love him to please her father, and how she had watched when her lover from a rival criminal syndicate had Royal beaten to death, how she'd laughed aloud the whole time. He told me about the revenge he'd gotten. Royal was least careful with his words. He told me about losing his family and how none of this was worth what he'd lost.
Mm-hmm.
So Royal is beat to death by a gang. Like, this is all like mob violence, which is very different from Rosalie being raped and beaten to death by her fiance and his friends.
Mm-hmm.
It's like an entirely different situation.
I also think that the characterization of Royal is different than the characterization of Rosalie, because I don't think that, like, when Royal's saying, like, I was so consumed with, like, vanity and material things, I don't think that's true for Rosalie pre-vampire, but for, like, pre-transformation. I think she was a typical
young
like
girl. She's 16 years old.
Girl.
Yeah.
Who was, like, just, like, I don't think she was especially consumed with vanity and materialism.
She's just beautiful.
And she's not drawn to Roy because of his status.
Yeah.
Roy, is it?
Roy, which I thought was irresponsibly close to the name Royal.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I don't think that she's drawn to him because of, like, a dynasty or
No, she has no idea. She just wants attention. She's young and she wants to be loved. She's experiencing first love, and, like, she's raised to believe that, like, this is important. Marriage is an important status symbol for her.
Right. Whereas Royal, it seems like, is making more of the conscious choice to, like, marry up and like inherit things. Yeah. Which I guess wouldn't even be a possibility for Rosalie, because
she wouldn't be able to inherit that.
Able to inherit things. It just gives off, like, this different character completely.
Yeah. Not to mention that, like, getting caught up in mob violence is not the same thing as being raped by your partner and his friends.
Absolutely. Also, the hair. Like, let's talk about the hair again. Because now that we know the backstory, at the time period, long hair on a guy, not a thing.
Not really, yeah.
Also,
extremely out of time.
Especially if you're with the upper classes and mingling among the upper classes, because, like, that is where it's the most important to fit in. Yeah. Like, you don't have quirky people that are, like, trying new experimental things that fit in with, like, higher society. Like, those are outcasts. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so it just feels weird that Stephanie chose to, the hair doesn't keep translate. The long hair.
Yeah, the hair doesn't translate to Royal.
Yeah. I understand that, like, Rosalie's hair is important to her, but, like, Royal's hair can be important to him and not be long.
Yeah. We also get in the section that Victor actually got away. So, like, there could absolutely 100% be a sequel.
Absolutely.
Except it's implied. It says, he must have assumed that Joss had lost the fight and realized it was smarter to disappear, which Victoria does, and then she comes back because she's angry. And, like, if it's the same character, like, Victor would come back as well. There could very easily be a sequel there, but
Stephanie
so it's
alludes
kind of interesting.
To that, like, not to the possibility of her writing one, but she alludes to the possibility of a sequel existing by saying, like, you're free to speculate on what would happen. Like, is Victor coming back? Blah, blah, blah. Why wouldn't he?
Yeah, why wouldn't he?
It would definitely be a different story because, like, Beau is not, like, as fragile anymore. And it would be, like, a more even fight, and everyone would be able to be present, and we would lose the tent scene, and...
Yeah, I mean, Jules doesn't really feel as relevant anymore.
Yeah.
So that's still kind of confusing to me, and that's more relevant in the next section, but...
Sure.
So that's kind of it for, like, the insane amount of information that Beau gets while he's turning into a vampire. And then he wakes up as a vampire. And it feels like there's some Breaking Dawn parallels, too. Breaking Dawn Part 3, where Bella wakes up as a vampire. In the things that Beau/Bella experiences and, like, the new senses, but, and then going hunting. But I think that the biggest difference here is the conversation that Beau and Edith need to have, because... they have not been together for very long, and they have not discussed the possibility of Beau becoming a vampire. They have not discussed, like, whether that's something that Edith wants. Like, does she want, like, obviously she wants to spend the rest of her existence with him, but, like, they haven't talked about it. So
They
it's like a
haven't-
very different situation.
Yeah, they haven't vocalized the forever commitment
Yeah.
in the way that Bella and Edward had at that point, because Bella and Edward were literally married.
Yeah, they were married.
So, like, they were already in it for the long run.
Yeah, they were married and they had a
Whereas,
child.
Yeah, they were
Yeah.
they were married and yeah.
Yeah.
So
Married with kids.
they knew that they were going to be part of each other's lives forever.
Yeah.
Edith even mentions, like, if you don't want me with you, you're free to go be on your own. I'll teach you what you need to do in order to be a successful vampire, and like I'll let you go. And Bo is like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Which is like funny.
And then he's also like, obviously I'm gonna like not kill humans and I'm gonna like live the same lifestyle as you.
Yeah.
And it becomes clear that just like Bella, Bo has like super self-control as a newborn vampire, which is sort of explained in Breaking Dawn as Bella making an extremely conscious choice and having so much time and preparation, like knowing that she's going to become a vampire eventually. And Bo like has barely vocalized that this is something that he's interested in, even though he does know about vampires. So I would understand like why he would have some self-control, but it's literally the same amount of self-control that Bella has.
Yeah, it's really
which is
strange.
really interesting, except for maybe the fact that he was like screaming when he's being transformed, whereas Bella stayed absolutely silent.
Mm-hmm. It also might be it might be a testimony to Bella. I would say, Bo, though in worse shape than Bella was at the end of Twilight, is in better shape than Bella at the end of Breaking Dawn Part 2. Like,
emotionally, which doesn't really make sense. He doesn't seem to be that upset about losing his parents.
yes,
He does not seem to be that upset at all, which is
So we'll talk about that
super
more
fake,
next
but
time,
yeah.
for sure. But it seems like maybe Bella is like so broken at the end of giving birth to Renesmee.
yeah.
Which is when she turns into a vampire. Like, her spine is broken. All of her ribs are broken.
Yeah.
Like,
She's dead almost.
yeah, she's literally almost dead.
Yeah.
In, like, a very different way than Bo is almost dead. Like,
Yeah.
she's not, like, bleeding out. Like, her organs are failing
Yeah.
because of the stress of supporting a half-vampire baby. Like, there's
her like torso is open.
Yeah.
She's been like cut open.
And, like, her, like, body mass is all the way down, so like I don't even think maybe she didn't even have it in her to really scream.
I remember her narration of like the burning and like becoming a vampire is that she doesn't want to scream because she doesn't want to upset Edward.
Oh, interesting. Edith like is also very upset by this, and Bo is like, I was trying not to scream, but he still does.
Yeah, he can't handle it.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. Like that makes sense. It makes less sense that he's super in control. Some people say that that's like Bo/Bella's superpower, like apart from the shield, which we don't find out about in this book.
Yeah.
But that's a speculation. I kind of don't believe that that's real. Yeah. So, Bo and Edith go hunting. We don't actually see that happen. We just kind of see them have this conversation about like wanting to be together, and like Edith is like a really real sad girl about it.
Bo keeps doing this thing where when Edith starts on one of her like little like I did this to you, like blah, I hate myself like moments, he like puts his finger like over her mouth, and she like is like silenced by him, and I hate it. The third time he puts his entire hand over her mouth, and we're in the car driving, and Sam goes, wow, I can't believe that he just put his whole fist in her mouth.
But then she actually like is like, don't do that again.
She's like, if you ever do that again, I will bite you. Which is really funny.
He is like weirdly not sad about his parents. We get more of that in the next chapter, but on page 369, Edith is like, I've taken you from Charlie and Renee, blah blah blah, and he's like, yes, it's hard. It's going to be hard for a long time, maybe forever, right? But why would I put that on you? Joss is the one who killed me. You brought me back to life. And it's like, that is very dismissive. He's clearly like not processing it, maybe.
Yeah.
But he just seems, he's like so excited to be a vampire. Like he's like, oh my god, I'm so fast. Like this is so much fun. Like I can like hear and see all these things.
Yeah.
Which like granted like probably is super fun, but that's all we're really getting out of him right now.
It doesn't read the same as like, it just doesn't really give me the same characterization as him and Bella, because Bella's very anxious about what's gonna happen, even though she knows it's what she wants and she knows it's gonna happen. She's really anxious about like how people will react to her death.
Mhm.
And we don't, in this chapter, we don't learn about, like, how they're going to stage, like, Beau's disappearance and
Yeah.
death or whatever.
I mean, in breaking down, like Bella doesn't really have to do that. Like, she can just sort of disappear and, like,
Yeah.
won't see any of those people ever
Yeah.
again.
But she's
But they-
yeah.
They just will assume that she's still alive and just went away. Which
Yeah.
is so much better.
Yeah, and, like, but she's, even then, she's still worried about
She's still
that.
worried about what people will think.
And she's worried about, like...
I mean, she was worried about getting married because she didn't want people to think that,
Yeah.
like, she was pregnant, but, like, joke's on her.
And then, like, Beau doesn't seem to care.
He doesn't seem to care what anyone thinks.
Even though it's a much worse situation.
Yeah, it is.
As far as, like, public perception. Because,
Yeah.
like...
He kind of gets the shorter end of
Yeah.
the stick in terms of all of that.
Mhm.
And that will be explored later in the epilogue, but...
So say at the end of Twilight, Bella could be saved, or Bella could be turned into a vampire, or Bella could die, whatever, all
Yeah.
three options. Like, if Edward had stopped and given her the option then,
She wanted to change. I mean, she
She-
talks about it,
yeah.
right? In the prom
it
scene.
makes me wonder if, like, she in that moment would have been like, yeah, change me.
Yeah, I feel like she would have.
Yeah. She's not given that choice.
She's not given the choice. I think that this alternate ending to, like, the Twilight story is sort of shows how that would have played out. Maybe I think that it's one of the possibilities that Alice slash Archie sees,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why Edward is so angry. Like,
Mhm.
he's like, don't tell her about it. Like, she doesn't have to change right now, and they
Mhm.
happen to get there in time where she doesn't actually have to change right
Yeah.
then. But
And Edith talks about how, in the same way that Edward does, like, Edith's plan, which is a stupid plan, and
Yes.
Beau says so.
Beau says that's a stupid plan.
Like, he verbatim says, like, that's a horrible idea or something
Yeah.
like that, is like, oh, like, well, what I would have done
It's like,
is,
grow old with
like,
you.
I
and,
would
like,
have grown old with you, or you would have grown old, and I would have been there, and, like, I would have been your caretaker as you got older, and, like, we would be together for as long as it was appropriate, and then I just would have been
Then I would have killed myself
your
at
pal,
the end.
and then I would have killed myself when you died. And Beau is like,
That's fucking dumb.
that's so stupid.
It's like, thank you, it is.
So yeah, there's a lot of differences, and I highly recommend, if you haven't read Life and Death, even though we've just given you a lot of the information, you should absolutely check it out for yourself, because it is a absolutely wild ride.
Mm-hmm.
Try to get it from a secondhand store if you can, so you don't give any more money to Stephanie.
We'll do one more episode. Next episode will be our last one.
Mhm.
We'll talk about the epilogue, and we'll probably just talk about the book as a whole. It's something. We'll probably talk about the title.
Mhm.
Of Life
Yeah,
and Death.
absolutely.
But yeah.
I changed my Instagram bio. It used to be, since I'm going to hell, I might as well do it thoroughly, which is a line from Twilight that has been adapted into the movie as, since I'm going to hell, after he's like, I'm breaking all the rules
Yeah.
anyway. I changed it from that because, like, I'm rebranding. And I changed it to There Was Something Better Than Sunshine.
Oh my god. And it's you.
And it's me. I'm better than Sunshine.
Well, we'll see you next time when we
Next
discuss
time.
the epilogue. Be there, Beard Square, because it's very interesting.
It sure is. And if you think that was a lot,
Yeah, just
wow.
you wait. Just you wait.
But for now, that's all, folks.
Thank you for listening to Gender Forking. To stay updated about the podcast or to contact us, follow us on Twitter at @genderforking or like us on Facebook at facebook.com/genderforking. For more Twilight content from us, you can follow our blog at bowlingshirtbellas.tumblr.com. If you haven't read Life and Death and you aren't reading along at home, visit bowlingshirtbellas.tumblr.com/genderforking for plot summaries and more information about the text. For other inquiries, you can email us at bowlingshirtbellas@gmail.com. The music you are hearing is Thursday in Snow Reprise by Blank Kit.